Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Phone Booth Fighting. We are live on YouTube. We're live on the Phone Booth Fighting YouTube channel. Hopefully, there's not too much of a glare behind me there. The man who provides a glare just by coming on the screen is that guy right there. That's Frank Mir wearing the very handsome Phone Booth Fighting t-shirt that is available at phoneboothfighting.com. How's it going, Frank? What's happening today?
I'm doing good. I'm sorry if I keep staring off to my right. About 3 weeks ago, Bella rescued a pigeon that fell out of its nest in our backyard. So we had a bird cage from a previous bird that we had years ago. So I broke it out and fed it for the last couple of weeks. In fact, we had to like grind up meal and use a medicine dropper to feed it. And now it's been eating regular food and drinking water on its own. And I just opened the cage and kind of walked over here. Now we're just kind of watching it. It's flapping its wings, but it ain't getting anywhere. But I figured at least it knows it has freedom and the food's open. And if it needs to go back in the cage, I'm thinking I'll just let it roam around today. And tonight I'll put it back in the cage if it can't get out of the backyard. So no cats get it, you know?
Yeah, it's always a good day for a random homeless animal when they happen upon the Mir household.
My daughter, her secondary career after becoming the undisputed MMA champion of the world is going to be a zookeeper.
Yeah. I could see that. Excellent.
But I mean, I love animals too.
Yeah.
But I'm a little bit more pragmatic about it. Obviously, I'm not a vegetarian, and you know, I'm never cruel though. But my wife, she's probably going to be the death of me because, you know, there's been 2 times in our life where I've had to get out of a car with her screaming at me to go rescue some random dog in the street, you know, and I'm sitting there going, you know, the dog gets hit. I mean, it's a sad story, but, you know, I got children. I've tried to explain that to her. And nope.
No, that's how I've ended up with some of my permanent residents is, in fact, Sasha, we got, I was notified that she was in she had been living in like this construction lot, like where they kept, not a construction site, but where they like parked heavy machinery overnight, you know? And I knew the business that this lot was located next to, and they're like, yeah, this dog just lives over there and everything. And so I went over there a couple of nights in a row and tried to rescue her. She was super standoffish, you know, because she was getting attacked or something. So she was very like aggressive, defensively aggressive. But then as soon as I got her, she just totally calmed down. It's like they know they're okay, you know, like they're not sure what's happening until they find out for sure. Hello to the folks jumping in over there on the chat. We'll maybe get some questions here in just a little bit. If anybody's got them, you can feel free to throw them in the chat. The YouTube banner is right there across the bottom of the screen. Please like and subscribe if you're watching us and you happened upon us for the first time. And also check out the audio version of the podcast, and that is available wherever you podcast. We also have a Patreon page at patreon.com/phone booth fighting, where we throw up extra additional content for our premium subscribers over there.
A good 10 feet. Make sure you didn't open the pool. Sorry.
That's all right. Now we have the Mir manor has turned into an aviary. Right. We've got birds flying around inside the house.
Does it make it? No, I just don't want it to fly into the pool. I'm pretty sure it can float, but I'm not an expert. Is that it over there in the bowl? Yeah, he made it across the pool. Maybe it is time for it to go.
You know, I need to be one of those friends, Mala, over at some point to show you what she can do in your pool.
Oh yeah,
she loves swimming. Our pit bull, our pet sitter has a pool, and about I guess it's been a couple of years now when we first got Nala, but our pet sitter had said to us, she's like, you know, I think Nala might like getting in the pool. And so she put a life jacket on her and everything, and she got in the pool with her, you know, to make sure she could swim okay and everything. And man, she is taken to it so much now. When she goes over there, she just dives in, like no life jacket, nothing. She just dives in, swims. She'll dive down for like toys, floating toys and
No
everything.
kidding.
Oh,
I've
she
never seen a
loves it.
dog do that.
Yeah, she loves it. I'll have to send you some pictures of that. Well, since you and I talked last night, we were on the phone last night. We were setting up this scheduled time this morning to tape the podcast, actually to go live on YouTube like we're doing. I broke a pipe in the house, Frank.
Oh, did you know?
Yeah. I was trying to be a plumber last night, and you and I, we have plenty of things in common, and one of the things, sadly, that we have in common is neither one of us are very handy around the house. Not only do we admit this, but we're not sure who would be worse at it.
Oh, no, it's me.
Well, I don't know if you've ever done this. So I endeavored to replace 2 sinks in the bathroom last night, and I got one done. One is working, fully functional. I was real proud of myself. And then I went to do the other one, and you have these things underneath your sink. Can you see that? You have these little knobs that turn like this, right?
Turn the water off and on, right?
Yep, if you have to turn your water off. Well, this used to be welded to the pipe under the sink, and I was turning it to shut the water off, and it was still dripping just a little bit, see? So I thought, okay, well, maybe it's not turned all the way off to where it needs to be, right? So then, oh, boy, this, hey, check this out, Frank. This from Davy Joyce. Love you, Frank, but Richard is a death sentence for any podcast. I don't know about any podcast. I don't think I've killed off any other ones, but it's nice of Davey to go to the trouble to check in with this death sentence of a podcast just to let us know that, though. I'm going to throw his comment up here on the screen so we can all enjoy it. Oh, there's Davey without his shirt on. Can you see him?
I do.
Yeah. Looks like he's ready for his next MMA fight there on somebody's rooftop. Anyway, so here's the thing. This thing that I snapped off says, now that I'm looking at it, it says it clearly on here, quarter turn only. Here's the problem. My eyesight's so bad that even with it saying quarter turn only on there, when I'm up under the sink, I can't tell it says that. It's a lot of good it's doing me now.
So you cranked in on it, huh?
Yep. So pipe broke, water spewed out everywhere. Basically we had to shut the water off, and now I got a plumber coming out.
I'm actually kind of the opposite. I think the reason why I have a hard time getting things done is because as a small child, I've always been a little stronger than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
So, if someone says they turn the key, I remember doing that to my dad's keys. He let me put the keys in the door. Well, I didn't have the keys turned all the way. So even at like 5 and 6 years of age, I just turned and broke his key off inside the door. So those have always sat with me. And I have hundreds of little incidences as a kid just breaking shit unintentionally. So now I'm that person, when I grab something, if it doesn't work exactly right, I kind of jiggle and move around. And I've had more than one occasion someone come over and just sternly shake something or pull on it and go, hey, you just had to give it a little more horsepower. I'm all, I suck at horsepower. I'm scared of it.
That's also a great way to get out of doing anything, because you can just be like, listen, I don't know my own strength. You don't want the Hulk coming over and helping you move, because you might break your furniture.
Is it the bunnies or the bird? Hey.
Oh, getting an update on the bird. What's happening?
No, I think our bunnies, because we have dogs and bunnies now.
Sure.
A couple of them lately have been fighting with each other. So Bella just took off outside. We have a little squirt, the little super soaker.
Yeah.
If one of them fights with each other, we just soak the aggressive one just to kind of train it not to be.
Is that an issue? Rabbit?
Yeah.
Aggression? I didn't know about that.
We've been taking them to the vet as they get of age to have neutered or spayed.
Yeah.
And the vet, because a lot of vets don't deal with bunnies. There's only 3 here in town that actually will. And so we've been getting kind of lessons while we're sitting there in the car, because we still can't go inside the vet office. So, someone will come out to get the animal. And, we find out they like to be in pairs. And yeah, they get sometimes aggressive with each other. You know, there's a pecking order, almost like a wolf pack, I guess. And you know, they'll fight, and it looks pretty vicious when they fight because you'll see one of them bite them, and they never draw blood, but they definitely pull a lot of hair out. And so they'll have a mouthful of fuzz.
Wow. Okay. Did not know that about rabbits.
Yeah, they got a little aggressive ass.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so that's why you and I should probably always avoid wrenching on things around the house. But
so do you have to work today, right, at 1?
Later, but I'm going to go in late because now I got to wait for the plumber to show. Oh, it's a mess. And then I had to make the call of shame, right? You know, I had to call work and I, listen, pipe broke. And, you know, what's one thing if it's winter, you know, and a pipe breaks, like people don't really question that because maybe the pipe froze or something. But this is like, oh, that's crazy. Pipe broke. You all right?
At least you're the one that makes the phone call. I don't even do that stuff. Like any decisions with the house, I have zero input. So like I've learned over the years to not even like bother. Like in fact, when I get asked a question, it's only to confirm whether it's the same thing she wanted. Because if I dare say contrary, it's like, well, no, I want to do it this way. I'm like, why'd you ask me? So like yesterday we had a guy come in to give us an appraisal on doing the sliding glass doors, redoing our 2 backwit sliders. And I just sat out in the living room the whole time. And I'm sure the guy thought that was weird that the whole time I was just talking to Mrs. Mir, and I'm just, I'm like, man, we'll cut out the middleman. I don't need to pretend that I have any decision in this at all.
You just sit there with the open checkbook and a pen, just waiting to get a number.
That's my only contribution to the whole ordeal.
Yeah. Well, do you do this? So I just caught myself doing this a little while ago. Like, you know how like when you screwed something up and if there's physical evidence around, you kind of want to clean it up. So like the house is clean, so it's fine for like a plumber to come through or whatever. But I found myself like around going, okay, all these tools need to be packed up. Like that's humility. That's going to be really bad if the pro comes in and he can see where the amateur had his tools laid out.
So you're saying I need to loan you one of my kids so they can be running around there. So that way you can be like, oh man, the kid's back there.
Yeah.
Fucking with the sink.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then pull him aside being like, your dad threatened you, not a word. Stick to the script. Stick to the script. Yeah. Yeah, so I was cleaning up all the elements of shame this morning. I was like making sure all the water was wiped up and everything. Well, let's see. UFC is going to be on Fight Island this weekend, so maybe we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
Since we got some in the chat, you want to hit a couple of questions here real quick?
Shoot.
Okay, let's got here. Oh, here's somebody checking in from Russia. You can tell they're from Russia because I can't read their name. Can you read any Russian writing?
No, not even close.
Yeah.
It is a whole different alphabet, so I mean, it's just
right.
Immensely hard.
Oh, well, look, this guy's helping us out. He says, hello, my name is Ivan. Well, I can't read. I guess that, well, now we know how to spell Ivan. If you look at it,
like, how does that even look like Ivan, right? Like to us.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it doesn't. It looks like a backward N and then BAH is what I see. Yeah.
One time I remember I got done with a show. Mm-hmm. Was it, I think, Fight Nights or something? And I think I was in St. Petersburg. And when I was done, everybody else having to go in the back and get these buses. And it was like 12:30 at night. And I looked over and there was the subway was right there. And I remembered that the subway was right by the hotel I was staying at. I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to wait here for an hour or two. All this traffic, the whole parking lot was locked up. I'm like, you guys will be here for 2 hours. I'm going to go take the subway. Yeah, that was an experience.
Tell me that eventually the subway came you see it pulling back up in front of the buses where you got on. Did it eventually just take you right back where you were? No,
what I eventually did was because in Russia, me walking up and asking people for help wasn't as responsive as I am like in South America. Right. Just different countries handle things differently. And so, no one was really helpful. They didn't want to help me out. And so I ended up trying to figure out what to do. And I ended up downloading Google Translate. And it has a camera on there to where you can hold the camera up to a map or a word, and it'll translate it for you. So I'm actually sitting there like trying to translate this metro map. and figure out which trains to sit in. And it took me almost the whole night. I mean, sun was coming up by the time I got, the station's actually shut down, I think at like 2 a.m. or something. And I barely made it through and then had to walk. And I didn't even get close to home. And I ended up having to walk 3 or 4 miles. And yeah, by the time I got in my bed, showered, everything else, I saw the sun.
That sucks. Should have called a plumber. So Ivan says here, he's from Russia, wants to know about your next fight. We've talked about that on the podcast, basically just kind of a holding pattern right now because the only show that's up and running is UFC. Also wants to know, are you still planning to come to Russia? I mean, there was a time where you commuted back and forth to Russia here the last few years. I mean, you were over there so much. So I don't know. Yeah. What do you think more? Well, I mean, it's so hard to say right now with everything being shut down as far as when all that changes, right?
Yeah, and the way things are looking now, it looks like, in the U.S. we might, Russia might not let me in. A lot of the countries are banning U.S. travel. And so, right now, I'm kind of in a holding pattern still. I've reached out a little bit, but there's not a lot of people that are active right now, super active besides the UFC. And so, I made one little attempt to reach out there to see what interest would be there. And, we'll see what happens.
Something you could do? You could do, and I think this is going to become more and more common with these issues. You could do remote commentary.
Yeah.
Like
Cyrus Fees, who does a friend of mine who I've traveled to Russia with many times. He was just telling me he just did that for a show. He just brought that up not even a week ago.
Yep, you could do it, and that would help, certain shows from having to put so many people. One, they wouldn't have to deal with travel and all the rest of that, and it's not ideal. It would take somebody who's super competent, but you are, that's an advantage. Another advantage I think you could have in that situation is I think not everybody would be able to do that as competently, with that disconnect. So. That's that could work for you. All right, so let's see here. How about this one? Blake wants to know, you're the best heavyweight of all time, in my opinion. What's your all-time favorite submission from the bottom? Thanks, great podcast as always.
I've always liked pivoting on the arm bar from the bottom. I think that it helps keep people from being aggressive on you, and the fact that you flip your leg over someone's head. If you miss the arm bar, it's not a real hard objective to roll up on your shoulder and get off your back and now turn into an aggressor where you can go into a shot. I won my first heavyweight title with the arm bar. I still think it's a great move. It's just that, just has to be set up properly and people realize how the arm works.
You get a big leg to throw over someone's head. Can you do you have... Because I know you've got little tricks you've mentioned to me before, like little things, the technique within the technique, where like as long as I'm going for this, I know how to put a little extra torque here and there. I know how to do a little placement here and there to make it worse for the opponent. Do you have any way of using that leg as like a club or anything like that? I mean, I know you can't face kick somebody if their knees are down, but is there an opportunity to do something like that?
One thing that I've always done, and if you watch when I armbar people, I get my hips up off the mat as fast as possible. And I think that's one reason why I really like training with weights and doing a lot of strongman stuff is not bodybuilding, because bodybuilding, you want to just, you want to work the muscles. So you don't really care about the weight that you're working. But in strongman, it's all about how can you move this heavy amount of weight and heavier every time as fast as possible. So you're always looking for efficient ways to move your body. And so one thing I had realized from a very early age is that, hey, if I armbar somebody and I'm flat on my back, once I put my legs over their head, my knees are close to my chest. And just like if I was squatting, if I squat all the way down and I put my knees to my chest, trying to extend out of that is quite difficult. But if I were only to squat halfway down and then lift myself back up, obviously I can handle a lot more weight that way. And just like a lot of people would sit there and go, well, that's not a full squat. You're right, because I'm cheating, because I'm using mechanical leverage. I'm staying where I'm strong, which is the end of my extension of my hips. So whenever I armbar somebody, you'll see when I slap it on, I'm very concerned with getting my hips off the mat as fast as possible as my legs go over their head. And people think that has primarily to do with getting your hips underneath the armpit as high as you can and clamping down with your legs, which that is. But it also helps me prevent it from being crushed. Where if even as strong of a deadlifter as I am, if I wrap my legs around the head and the back and I turn the corner on an armbar, if my spine is fully on the mat and you crush forward to stop the armbar, my knees are in my face, I have to then try to pivot out the back door and sweep. It would be very difficult for me to leg press you off of me because I would such a disadvantage with my mechanical leverage. So that's like one trick that I've always tried to show people. It's like, hey, the minute your leg goes over the head and you're clamping down with your heels, you need to be rising your hips up off the ground, not only to grab and get good purchase of the arm bar with your legs, but also because now if the person tries to crush you, it'd be again like if I were to put you on a leg press machine. And I'm like, okay, Richard, lower the weight. And you only lowered it halfway. I can load it up pretty heavy and you could probably still push out of it. If I say, okay, Richard, lower the weight all the way to your knees or on your chest. Now let's load it up and see if you can get out of there. It's going to be much more difficult for you.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. And as I'm hearing that, that makes me want to go try that. Speaking of trying it, how about this from Douglas Hess? Checking in from Melbourne, Australia. Hello, Douglas. When it must be, was it nighttime over there?
Oh, yeah.
You know better than me. Yeah.
I think, well, it depends on like what the 14 hours ahead of us. So it's like,
Yeah. So Douglas is checking it. He says, thanks to Richard, I'm planning on doing Winter Warrior as soon as COVID is over. Good for you, man. Well, there you got Frank just gave you an armbar technique you can work on with Winter Warrior. Yeah, everybody check out winterwarrior.com. I never missed an opportunity to plug those guys, Richie, Cranny, and all the folks over there. Actually, they run that out of Australia, but it's a worldwide organization for folks who want to experience an amateur fight that have little to no training. And I got to do it twice. So I highly, highly recommend that. I'll give you a lot of good content for your podcast too. We got a lot of mileage out of that.
We did.
Let's see. Well, this will get us into the topic of this weekend, Frank. Here's John asking Masvidal or Usman. Who do you have? I've got Masvidal. So UFC, I guess 251 is this weekend. Now, this is the one that's going to be on Fight Island over there in Abu Dhabi. And this was originally supposed to be the welterweight champ Usman defending against Gilbert Burns. Burns tests positive for COVID, so he's out of the fight. And Masvidal takes this fight on just about a week's notice. There's a lot to talk about here, Frank. I mean, one, the fact that Masvidal was actually right up until that point, kind of in a public, I used to just call it a dispute or a little bit of a war of words or whatever with the UFC about feeling like he should be being paid more, and the UFC balking at that, and him kind of intimating that he might just sit out if he needed to. And then, of course, here comes title opportunity, and he's jumping in. I'm sure he was able to negotiate a handsome sum for jumping in and saving the main events. So let's just get first thoughts about this fight, Frank. What do you think?
Well, just to finish off with what to start off with what you finished with there, as far as Masvidal getting paid more. Well, he has to be. In fact, I think Masvidal should get paid more than Usman. And that's because, and if you guys go back through the podcast, anytime a fighter asks to get paid because of his fighting prowess, I never defend that. I always tell people like, hey, myself, when I fought Brock Lesnar, Lesnar made 2 or 3 times as much as I made. I was way more decorated as a mixed martial artist, but I realized that all it came down to is that who moves the ticker? He sells more. So guess what? If you make the company more money, you get a bigger share of that money. And so I feel that Masvidal, keeping that in line with the argument that I use when some fighters go, I should get paid more. I'm all, really? If I went right now and booked a venue here locally in town, do you really think you would sell it out, or is it the UFC that's selling it out? Now, some people are now bigger than that. And I think Jorge Masvidal is. You see him a lot in different avenues of our culture now, where he's kind of transcended just being a UFC fighter. I think that he's done well with his marketing. So that being said, more people are going to watch this fight now that Jorge's fighting than they would have watched it if it was Gilbert Burns and just Usman. So as far as Masvidal asking for pay, it's like, I get it. The UFC's put you in a position where you've had some pretty, marquee fights. I mean, you have, The Rock handing you a belt afterwards. I mean, his popularity has grown, and that equates to money. Is bottom line. In our world in fighting, the payment aspect, I'm still kind of split on whether it depends on whether you get to fight for a title or not, because I don't want it to turn into a YouTube event. But as far as how much you get compensated for your performance, is who's paying to watch it. If right now Mike Tyson says he wants to fight in MMA, you're telling me he's not worth $50 million because of the amount of people that would be willing to want to watch that? Mm-hmm. That's just how it works. And then as far as the fight itself on the technical prowess, there's just too many unanswered questions for me to really be solid about Masvidal, whether he's going to win the fight or not. The fact that, that he took the fight on short notice, usually in my book, that's a bad thing. Unless someone's been training. Then I just wonder, I'm like, okay, what kind of training have you been having with COVID-19 issue? And then on top of that, the contract negotiations. You're angry, you're being pissed off, you don't know when you're going to fight again. How motivated have you been to be in the gym training during? That's a very emotional, ordeal to go through when you're doing contract negotiations. Even though, his manager's dealing with probably, obviously the blunt share of it, he's still getting updates and then sitting there and just, it's kind of like you're in a car that you have very little control over, and other people are fighting over the steering wheel. And that's the situation he's in. So I don't know. I really don't. And in Masvidal in the past, as far as technique-wise, the one thing that Usman does that I think makes me nervous for Usman, as far as it would benefit Masvidal, Usman likes to come forward and very aggressively so. And he'll throw in, between takedowns and throwing just haymakers at you. He really caught Woodley off guard. But Woodley doesn't have a great uppercut. I think Woodley's kind of not used to people trying to run him over. I mean, he's a very powerful wrestler. He's a strong puncher. Most people try to fight him on the outside. I think that really threw him off. Coming in on Masvidal could be a recipe for disaster, because what Masvidal has going for him is I don't think he's going to purely just try to anti-wrestle with Usman, because I think he realizes that if Usman gets a hold of him, more often than not, I think he's going to finish the takedown. So instead, I think he's just going to try to punish him before he goes down. And with that kind of game plan, there's always a chance that one of those times that Usman goes down to grab the legs, now Masvidal comes up with a knee or an uppercut, because he's not willing. He's not worried about exposing his hips, because he's like, well, you're going to take me down anyways. Let me give you something to think about. Even if you get me down this time, next time you're going to hesitate, and that starts to play into the factor of the overall game plan. So I think that there's a chance that it's not one-sided. I think that Masvidal is a very dangerous fighter, but that being said, if I had to put money on it right now, I think I'd still probably go with Usman, just because of the track record of what he's done, and I guess who he's done it to lately, and how he's done it. Usman just, his endurance is incredible. I mean, the Colby Covington fight, just seemed like nothing could slow him down. Covington's known for his endurance, so, if he was able to outgrind a guy who's known for really putting a high-paced fight, and he walked through it and threw punches and even broke his jaw late in the fight with that kind of power, sustaining. So, I think Usman is a very difficult fight at welterweight.
So what I hear you saying is the upside of Masvidal here is that he will meet aggression with aggression. And so if Usman is the aggressor, those takedowns are going to be harder to earn than they would be against their more average opponent. That being said, that's going to be Usman's advantage, probably his path to victory. So if he can put in the extra work to get those takedowns and survive the risk of coming in when he does, that's probably his ticket to victory. But what I hear you saying is Masvidal is going to make those harder to earn and be dangerous in the process, probably more so than a lot of other people. Is that fair?
Yeah, I agree with that. That's basically in a nutshell what I'm saying. And obviously I'm speaking from, if I was in Masvidal's corner, I'd be like, hey, this guy's probably going to get us down anyways. He's not going to submit us on the ground. I mean, Jorge's been in there with Damian Maia for 3 rounds and didn't get submitted. So, I mean, that's a pretty strong testament to his ability to defend a submission. He's a tough guy. I don't think he'll be, he'll be able to avoid some of the ground and pound and just, and watch for it. But when Usman comes in for a takedown, I'll be like, hey, man, make him pay for it. Don't hesitate. Don't sit there and go, well, if I do this, he'll take me down. I'm like, he's going to take you down anyways. Might as well try to break his ribs or cause a concussion on his way in.
Yeah. I think that all sounds right to me. And I also think this just, again, going back to the marketing aspect of this, I think this just helps this card. It's already an unorthodox situation as far as dealing with the Fight Island and, all that kind of stuff, getting the word out about selling these pay-per-views. And not that the Gilbert Burns fight wouldn't have been interesting, but my gosh, at this point, Gilbert Burns is a guy who's, I think, lesser known to the general public than Kamaru Usman. So, you were going to have a challenge where that was concerned, and now all of a sudden you've got some marquee name value attached.
And that there in itself, I mean, your acknowledgement there is why I think that, Jorge has a strong, argument for why he should get paid more. I mean, the guy draws attention, whether it's negative or positive. He's definitely somebody who is, there's going to be more people watching this fight now that Gilbert Burns is not in it because Jorge's in it. And just that's the way it is. Do I think that the the Usman and Burns fight would have been super interesting? Yeah, man. I was actually really excited to see those two go at it because such a similarity in kind of their intensity to how they approach the fight, even though there's slight differences in in their grappling as far as more wrestling on Usman's side, more jiu-jitsu on Burns' side, but they kind of throw punches the same way, and really, their stance and stuff. I thought this would be super interesting to see them collide together. But that being said, I would be surprised if somehow in an alternate reality we can have it to where Usman and Burns fight each other, and you tell me that they outsell Masvidal and Usman, and I'll be like, there's no way. Masvidal's going to bring more. He's just going to bring more people to the table.
Well, and we're probably, if Usman gets past Masvidal, we'll probably still get that fight because, hopefully Burns will recover just fine from this. Speaking of recovering from COVID, though, and speaking of what you would do if you were in Jorge Masvidal's corner, there's an open spot over there. I don't know if you heard that his coach, Mike Brown from American Top Team, tested positive for COVID as well. Yeah. So Masvidal does not have his main corner man. How much of a factor do you, I know that probably varies fighter to fighter, but just like you were talking about taking a fight on short notice, what do you guess it's like for Masvidal getting that news? I mean, I know Masvidal himself, I believe his adjective was devastated that Brown wouldn't be there with him. Of course, Masvidal's been doing this a very, very long time, so it's not like he's a rookie. But how much of a factor do you think that could play?
Well, I mean, once the fight's going, you called it, you took the words out of my mouth. It's really fighter by fighter. But I do know that, when you're before a fight, your mind is very much focused on the fight, which makes it, you seem scattered in other areas because you're focusing on such an endeavor in front of you. And so, it's helpful to have somebody who always organizes stuff. And I find that that's what more a head coach does, is kind of get everything out of your way besides what you have to deal with. So the fighter's not. So as long as, Brown can probably still do all that via cell phone, calling people, go, hey, what's going on? Obviously, it's much easier when you're, your boots on the ground type scenario where he's there watching what's happening. But as far as once they close the door, it's a fight. You know what I mean? Cornermen can kind of help a little bit in between rounds as far as a little bit of pivotal advice here and there. But that is so just on the relationship between the fighter and the cornerman that it's hard to really equate how much of the percentage that helps. during the fight. Where I will say again that the lion's share of where a cornerman's important is fight week. You know, the week of the fight, like, you know, after we do a photo shoot, is food already prepared and ready and organized? And when people go up and go, hey man, so before the weigh-in, are we gonna, no, and then that's when the cornerman jumps in, he starts talking, hey, leave him alone, like, or her alone. You know, like, no, this, you almost become like their personal bodyguard, you know, for a fighter. I mean, and that's where I've found that I've leaned the most on cornermen is, you know, I shouldn't have to be dealing with shit besides preparing to fight somebody.
Yeah. How, you know, I don't know what the rules with something like this would be, but it's funny. We were talking about doing remote commentary earlier, and then, you know, with everything going on with the COVID and everything.
Guys have done it.
What?
What you're about to say, guys have done.
They have done.
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to say.
Put a cell phone, put a headphone in. The other quarterman's at home watching and talking.
Yeah. Yeah, they could do that, right? There's
Completely
no
legal.
rule against it.
It just depends. It's only the reason why it gets hairy is the signal inside of the arena. Are you hooked into the Wi-Fi? I mean, I'm sure, you know, you've sat there, you know, ringside, cage side, you know, press pool. If you don't have access to Wi-Fi, your phone doesn't work that great there, you know? And so, you know, possibly that could work. I've seen it work, and I've also seen it not work, where guys are just sitting there, you know, messing with their phone instead of, it's like, well shit, that ain't going to happen, dude. Focus on the fight, you know?
Yeah. Where like after the fight, you're like, no, I said, don't go for the takedown. My signal was breaking up. I said, don't go for it. Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, that's going to be the main event. Any other thoughts on, you know, there's 3 title fights on this card. One I'm real interested in is the rematch between Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski, because I was at the first one. And Volkanovski that night really had the recipe for defeating Max Holloway. I mean, possibly the greatest featherweight of all time, certainly in the running for that conversation. But Volkanovski's tight technique and also his leg kicks that he was able to establish without Holloway really checking him really threw off Holloway's striking game. I mean, this was one of those situations. I'm always fascinated by these kind of rematches, Frank, because it's like, you know, sometimes rematches are like super close and you go, well, you know, this one round went this way, but this other round went that way. This is one of those fights when I look at it, I go, okay, there is one thing that clearly was happening throughout the fight that one guy was doing at will and the other guy really was not answering. And if that does not change, this should probably go exactly like it did before. But will he? But I don't have to tell him that. He knows it too, meaning Holloway. So will he be able to adapt? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's sometimes these situations come up where it's actually kind of an obvious set of issues that you can lay out, and then but at the same time, it's kind of fascinating because even though that worked so well the first time around, really the story is to see what kind of adaptation Holloway can make here.
Yeah, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. And whenever you see somebody comes out and has found the chink in someone's armor, and they just kind of basically do a rinse and repeat over and over, rinse and repeat. The question is going to be, can that person fix it? When it's something as pieces of a technical game, I think that it is possible. Like what happened in the last fight, do I think that, you know, Holloway could make that adjustment? I do. You know, I think there's some adjustments there. Now, when it's a skill set that completely dominates somebody, say you roll with Damian Maia in a fight and he's able to get you down and he chokes you out. And now you're going to train jiu-jitsu to avoid being choked by him. I'm like, that's really not – we need to fix you maybe not going to the ground.
Yeah.
You're not going to make up for, like, we're talking that's a whole skill set now that you have to try to, you know, to improve upon. When it's something as simple as, well, a certain jab got through or a certain angle of a punch or, you know, and Holloway not checking kicks, it's like, well, this isn't a hard adjustment. We might adjust our stance a little bit, make it easier to get our shin on that leg. Even if we only block 1 out of 3 of them, it's going to slow down the kicker. I used leg kicks a lot in my last fight, and I'll be the first one to tell you. One of the quickest ways to shut me down, and I like kicking to the legs. I love, inside, outside leg kicks. If you check one of my kicks, my kicking might throw one more in another 2 minutes to see if that was a fluke. You check 2 kicks, I ain't throwing kicks anymore. Unless I completely see an opening and you're off balance and you're not able to block, then maybe I might fire one off. But the risk of injury is so high, going shin to shin is not ever a good idea, especially for the guy throwing the kick. It tends to break your shin at a higher percentage than the guy receiving the kick, because a lot of times his foot's still touching the ground, creates a base. Watch, Corey Hill, watch Anderson Silva, for just MMA references, let alone the countless times in K1 or in Thai boxing that you've seen it happen. And so, see what I mean? But that's a quick adjustment. Now, that being said, I'm sure Volkov's team is also thinking the same thing, going, okay, if he adjusts to block our kick, for example, just focusing on that so I could use that as my analogy. What would that, every defense on every battlefield has a strength, but also has a weakness. There is no perfect defense. There is no if you get into this position or you counter this way, it's impossible for him to recounter you. It's if you orientate your body in this direction, it's going to make the shin block easier. But now you've rotated your shoulders to block the inside kick, and now something coming over the ear in this direction becomes more viable. So now it's I'm going to fake the inside kick and then throw a hook to the other side so that when you turn to block the kick, or I'll throw the kick and now you turn your hip and now a single becomes easier to snatch up. Or maybe now you change your weight on where you put your feet because you want to be able to lift your knee up faster. Now I can throw 1-2 into the middle of your chest and run forward and knock you off balance and hit you with a running double. Again, everything has its weaknesses. So that being said, if I was on Volkov's corner, I'd be okay, if he makes these adjustments, we're going to do a playbook. If we do this, he's going to do this or this or this. He either has choices A, B, and C. We'll throw the same maneuver. Maybe he hasn't fixed it. Maybe he's under delusion that I was just lucky. So why fix it? Let's go ahead and find out. Let's check out what he's been doing for the last couple months. Boom, throw the strike. Now you know that there's only certain percentages of what a person can logistically do. It's okay, well, he can evade it, he can block it, he can parry it, he can counter it, he can stuff it. Okay, well, what are we going to do if we see one of those reads? If he blocks it, we're going to go here. If he just moves his leg back, we're going to go here. If he sits down on it, we're going to go here. If he just tries to go here, and then you train those responses. So not only is the guy who lost to a certain maneuver trying to improve his game, the other guy is on the other side trying to keep the advantage he has, going, okay, now I kind of know where you're going. You have to address this problem. So I kind of know what you're doing in your camp. I have a little bit of spyware going on, just because obviously you're trying to fix this. And if you're not trying to fix it, we're going to find out in the first 2 minutes of our fight, because I'm going to start off doing how round 5 ended is how round 1's going to end. Or it's probably round 4 in that fight, because Max was doing pretty good towards the end. So. Yeah. So I think from a technical standpoint, this is a very compelling storyline to see how those adjustments will affect the sequel. Lastly, the trio of title fights on the line here. You got Jose Aldo and Peter Yan for the vacant bantamweight title after the sudden retirement of Henry Cejudo. Speaking of leg kicks, Frank, when I look at this fight, that is something that to me, throughout his career, Jose Aldo has always had some of the best of. But Jan, much like we were talking about with Masvidal's aggression meeting Usman's, that's something I see Peter Yan's strength being as well, is being that aggressor. Like, this is going to be, I think, a full-time job throughout this fight, is Aldo having to try to use those signature kicks of his to keep Jan's aggression at bay. You have any thoughts here? Yeah, I think that Peter Yan is going to eventually be the champion. I don't see anybody right now that's beating him. I've watched him back at ACB. I firmly believe that's why Henry Cejudo retired, so he doesn't have to worry about ever getting matched up with Peter Yan, because Peter Yan would take his head off. He's just a phenomenal fighter. He has all the striking power, speed, and prowess and technique that Jose has. Jose is a very technical and very powerful, quick striker, but he just doesn't have the pace that Peter has. And we saw that in the Max fight, where Max just basically mowed him down. He just walked in and just goes, okay, I'm just going to, fatigue you. I don't see how, obviously, anything can happen when guys are throwing at each other. I just don't see him able to keep, Peter off of him. I think that he's just going to run him over by attrition. I see this fight maybe going 2 rounds.
Yeah. Yeah, that especially at this point in Aldo's career, I think that's a real possibility too. If I had to pick a finish out of these 3, I would say this is the leading contender for that. I mean, Masvidal, very difficult to finish. So that fight, I think, could easily go to a decision. And then, with Volkanovski, I was going to point out one thing on his record. An undefeated UFC fighter, but it always impresses me when a fighter can about equal amount of times either finish a fight or go to a decision, and particularly when all those decisions are unanimous. And that's something you see on Volkanovski's record. About half the time he's been in the UFC, he'll finish a guy with strikes, but the other half, he'll go to decision, and they're always unanimous. And when I see that on paper, especially if it's more than just a few, Frank, to me, that tells me that if that's kind of another weapon to have, is that if I'm going to take you to a decision, guess what? Nobody's ever really doubted it. It's always looked very definitive by the point that we got there. So it's not like I got away with one, and it's also not like it was really open to interpretation. I think that's another key factor too, is when your decisions are definitive like that.
I agree.
Here's Maria. Always, I'll say this about Maria. She is a gold star phone booth fighter, listener / viewer, because every time we're on here, she checks in with a lot of questions. She's always watching the episode. So hello, Maria. She wants to know if Phone Booth Fighting will do a live stream reaction for UFC 251. We, one way or another, we should probably react to the fights, Frank. I don't know if we'll do it live while they're on the air. I don't know what our Saturdays look like, but we could at least get together and watch it.
I'm a bachelor this Saturday. My wife's going. Oh, hold on a second. Can I say that? She's going to Sacramento. Anybody that knows anybody back home, don't tell my niece.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think my 12-year-old niece listens to the podcast. But Jennifer is going to fly down with Isabella and Ronan. Friday, I drop them off at the airport. They don't come back till Sunday. So it's just going to be me and Cage hanging out. So, right. He has football practice. I'm going to hit Nick's on Saturday. Other than that, in the evening, in fact, I mean, if one of us wants to go to the other one's house, I don't know how you're feeling comfortable with that yet.
I'm comfortable with you. I'm not comfortable with the average yahoo out there on the street, because I'll tell you what I'm seeing. This just drives me crazy. What I'm seeing more and more of is, have you encountered the guy or the lady in the store that has the mask on technically because they were told that that's the only way they're getting in the store, but the mask is down under their chin?
Yeah.
You seen oh, this makes me insane.
Or just the nose out,
Or that.
Look, my opinion on the mask issue is, I think we talked about this last night. I always make the joke. I think I probably said this so many times, it's becoming redundant. But I say I always pray to the God of statistics. Mm-hmm. When people sit there and go, well, masks work. Why are social distancing? If social distance works, why do we have to wear masks? If they both work, why are we quarantining? Why are we doing this? Why is there limited numbers? And all I can do is look on the news, and I look at the countries that have high percentage of mask compliance, and they have lower numbers than we do. It just like the math just says, well, hey, if everybody wears masks, it's not going to protect you. I get that, but it helps keep people from spreading it. And so it muffles it. Does it suppress it? No, not at all. It's not 100%. Just like wearing my seatbelt is not 100%. Having my brakes checked in the car, it's not 100%. I can wear my seatbelt, my airbag can go off flawlessly, and I still might get severely injured or die in a car wreck. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to put my seatbelt on and hope that my airbag's engaged, and make sure that if I hear a screeching noise on my brakes, I go get them checked out, because all it does is improve my percentages. And I think I understand that probably better than what most people do, because I see it every day in my career. In combat world, you can go to the gym every day. There's no guarantee of success. I can train, I can eat right, I can sleep right. You can do everything from A to Z perfect. Walk out there, get knocked out in 15 seconds.
Yeah.
The other guy could have been hanging out with hookers and doing blow for the last 3 months and knock you out in 15 seconds.
And it also doesn't mean that you had a bad game plan
going in.
I mean, to further the MMA analogy, if I'm on my stool and I'm behind in a fight, and we are behind in this fight against COVID, okay? COVID's up on the cards right now. So if we're behind and you're cornering me and you tell me an adjustment to make, and that doesn't end up working out in the fight, that doesn't mean you were incompetent. You were looking at, you were using the information you had at your disposal to calculate the best possible counter approach. And that's what we have to go with. And that's what science is. That may change. Next fight, you might have a different opinion, and it might be based on whatever we learned from this fight. You and I were talking about this on the phone last night. It's like these people get mad. Well, I don't understand why this month they're saying do this, and 2 months ago they were saying it wouldn't matter, or it wasn't as big of a concern. It's like you said, because there's more information. That's also how science works. That's how history works. You know, used to they thought bloodletting was the best way to drain the body of whatever was inside it. Thinking has changed a bit on that with new information, and as hundreds of years have gone by. So
I was seeing this the other day when we were having a discussion in the gym, because one of the guys was like, well, you're not wearing a mask while you're here. I'm all, it's just not feasible. It's not feasible for me to put a mask on while we're rolling or while we're training, because it's not going to stay on.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense to even attempt it. You know, it's very high workload for very little return rate. You know, and so I always use the analogy of like, hey, look, you know what? Growing up my whole life, I have personally never met somebody with HIV. I might have. I'm sure I have statistically, but I've never sat in a room and someone goes, yeah, I caught HIV. I'm like, oh, okay. You know, what medication are you on? How did it happen? You know, I mean, like, I've never had this conversation. I don't think HIV is a hoax. I've seen enough people on TV get it that I'm like, oh, well, it's there. That being said, I'm pretty sure the chances, I mean, I have friends that, I worked in the club with, that they would tell me constantly that, you know, they've never worn a condom in their whole life, you know, and, you know, they've had their share of gonorrhea and whatnot, but they don't have AIDS. That being said, I still don't think it's a bad idea to wear condoms, because, you know, if you're not having sex with somebody that you know that is monogamous with you, why wouldn't you want to strap up? Just because it's like, well, the chances are really low. I'm like, yeah, but if you're wrong, you only got to be wrong once. It's kind of like I was actually teaching one of the girls here at the house, Jennifer, the daughter of our youngest grandchild, Kim, about firearms. And every time I was unloading the weapon or checking it, I would hand it to her and I'd have her redo it. And I told her, I said, hey, I know it seems like I'm redundant about checking the firearm. I just saw you clear it, then you hand it to me, and then I re-clear it, and I'm sticking my finger up the magazine well, and I'm sticking it inside the chamber to have a physical, you know, and I'm looking. I said, I know it seems like overkill, but the reason why is because in the 30 years that I've been around, you know, 35 years now since the first time my dad took me shooting, I've never had a misfire. I've never made a mistake in an accidental discharge, because I was taught, hey, in certain points in life, redundancy is okay. You know, the guy that builds my airplane that I'm going to fly on, I don't care if he's a little overboring on the, you know, hey, this only needs 4 bolts. How many did you put? 6. I don't have a problem with that. Doesn't bother me. Instead of someone going, well, really 2 would suffice. I'm like, yeah, but if we're wrong, you know what I mean? You only got to be wrong once in this situation. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Same with the gun thing. It's like, well, if we're wrong, it's like, hey, you know what? All the dry firing practice I do, I can't ever. Being wrong is just not an option. It just isn't. So like being a little bit, and then on the flip side, when people like, and I open this up to any of our listeners, what do you lose out on? Like I don't understand this. Like, I feel like it's the white flag. Like I'm acknowledging that I'm a pussy, or you know, and I don't get that. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger's a Republican, and I watched him put a mask on. You know what I mean? Like, and you're telling me he's a pussy? I mean, that might be the most alpha male of all alpha males that I can think of. If you say, hey, put down the most heroic example of manliness that you can think of between physical prowess and mental, you know, ability, I'm like, oh, Schwarzenegger, you know what I mean? One of the smartest, most fit guys ever driven human beings ever to walk the face of the earth. He put a mask on. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, but like, you know, him as an example, I look at that, I'm like going, all right, well, if he knows shit I probably don't know, if he's putting one on, I'll wear one too. And again, going back to what I said earlier, all the other countries that are doing it, look at New Zealand, look at Japan, South Korea, it's like, you know, they didn't even close down as hard as we did in some of those areas, and they still have lower records than we do. And the only thing I can point to is they all have really high mask compliance.
Yeah, this idea of there being some sort of social stigma for somebody being cautious, to me, is absurd. Like, to use your gun analogy. So what's the first rule of handling any firearm? Assume it's loaded, right? Don't point it at anything you don't intend to kill, right? Now, if you hand me an unloaded weapon and I'm still adhering to those rules that I just laid out, you could look at me and say, oh, this guy, he's paranoid. He's being overly cautious. I handed him an unloaded gun. What's an unloaded gun going to do? Well, nothing is the answer to that. An unloaded gun is going to do nothing. However, I'm going to assume it's loaded for redundancy, just like you said, just like with the pilot, because we only have to be wrong once. Now, why is it that if I'm at the gun range and you handed me an empty weapon and we all saw the chamber and we all know there's nothing in it, whatever, you handed it to me, but yet I'm still super cautious with it? Am I a pussy? No, people are looking. In fact, it's the opposite. If I start waving that gun around, responsible gun operators are going to be looking at me. Well, get this idiot out of here. You know, why is it that goes one way, say with firearms, and it goes the other way with the mask? You know, like,
I don't get it. That's why, like I said, and everybody in my circle doesn't really get it either. So, like, for me to expand my knowledge and just, if somebody here is listening, please, if you can articulate, you know, why you feel that we shouldn't wear masks. It's like, well, because it symbolizes. I'm like, it symbolizes what? Like, I'm not understanding. Like, this is the white flag, and let's just say, like, we all wear masks. Like, do they track us now? I mean, if anything, like, I've made jokes in the past. I'm like, hey, I kind of like this mask thing walking around, especially with all the facial recognition technology, you know, coming up. You know, it might block you off. I mean, I see a lot of advantages to it, you know, all around. I mean, I like walking into a store and not having to talk for a little bit. It's kind of nice, you know, but yeah, I don't get the, you know, I don't get the us versus them, and this is going to be our flag to acknowledge each other. You know, you're a liberal pussy if you wear the mask, and, you know, you're a diehard conservative if you don't. I don't know how that became a political thing, you know, medical advice.
Well, let me show you an example of why we need to make sure we're wearing these. Can you see these comments? Look at this guy. Now, rapid fire from First to Fight 1000. Spare us the COVID propaganda. What is this faggotry? Come on, stick to talking about fighting. Fear is the new virtue. You like wearing a muzzle, keep it to yourself. First mandatory mask, then come the mandatory shots, moron. So he's one of these guys. But wait a minute.
Like, wearing seatbelts in Nevada is mandatory. If you get pulled over, you don't have your seatbelt on, you get ticketed. So already, I mean, our government tells us to do certain things that we comply with. I mean, if you don't agree with me, then walk outside naked right now. And see how far you make it down the street, you know, before someone calls the cops on you. You know, so I mean, there's
where do you draw the line, Frank? First, you're telling me I can't walk outside naked. Then I'm going to have to put on a tie every day when I walk outside. I see what your agenda here is. Where do we draw the line? It's a slippery slope. That right there is one of the all-time dumbest arguments in the history of man. the where do we draw the line argument. And I'll tell you what's a close second to that is rapidly gaining on it because of people like this that we're dealing with is why do anything if you can't do everything? So that's the mask argument. Well, if the mask isn't going to be 100% effective, then why do anything? Probably, again, because like you said, you pray to the God of statistics. So it's not all or nothing. It's not, well, if I can't get 100%, why do anything? It's how do I get the highest percentage chance?
Yesterday, because I train twice a day, and yesterday was kind of a rough one because we did a morning session with Nick, and we were doing some sledgehammer stuff. I was tired. I took a nap, and then about 6 o'clock hit, and I'm supposed to drive down to jiu-jitsu. And I even looked over at my daughter. I'm like, hey, how are you feeling? Because she actually practiced 3 times yesterday, including that last one, between wrestling practice and weight training with me. I still went. I got up, I took a little bit of a pre-workout, kind of, and then when I got there, I still didn't feel great. But then by the time we started moving around, I still had a decent workout. And the reason why I think that's a good idea, because anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. If you tell me that, well, if you do this, it's 100%. If you don't show up, it's 0. But if you kind of give it a half-ass effort, you get a 50%. I'm all, well, shit, 50% is better than 0. Might as well, obviously I'm not saying half-ass your whole life, but anything that you can do, if it's worth doing, at least do it a little bit. Trust me. I mean, it's like those people that go, oh, if I can't work out 6 days a week, I'm not going to go. I'm like, you show up once or twice a week, you're still going to be in better health than the person who just sit there and goes, well, until I have my schedule set to where I'm able to hit my key points, I'm not going to start at all. Trust me, in 6 months from now, see who's farther along. The guy is waiting for it to be perfect, or the guy who went ahead and said, hey, I'll accept that it's never going to be perfect, and I'll give it the best shot I can.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of this has to do with the internet. We were talking about this last night on the phone. It's like stupid thinking used to have to spread. Speaking of spreading, it used to have to spread person to person. Like I would have to be an existing idiot to come along and then sort of try to turn you into one with any powers of persuasion.
Real quick, in the vaccination thing, they're going to come out like we already take vaccinations. Like, I mean, honestly, I would be lying to you if I told you everything I knew and every vaccination that I've taken or vaccination I've given my children. I kind of just go to the doctor and go, hey, what's up? This protects you from the mumps. All right. That doesn't sound like some shit I want my kids or I to have. Just fire away, doc. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm willing to bet that probably most of the people don't know. Like, I mean, honestly, could you sit there with a physician and break down what chemicals were in that vaccination you had when you were 10 years old, when you got a tetanus shot? I mean, if there was really this huge conspiracy to go ahead and get us all mandatory vaccinations, they already kind of have the whole. I don't think they need to force it and let us know they're there. Like, that's the thing. Like and I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but if I'm going to subjugate a group of people, I'm not going to let you know that I'm coming. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's going to be one of those things where it's like, oh, by the way, hey, do you want a brand new car? Come get the brand new car. Well, shit, that sounds like a good idea. Gotcha. Now I'm going to charge you 15% financing on this, and you're going to end up paying 3 times. That's how you get people. You make it to where they come in willing partners and happy to do so. The whole, like, I'm going to force this upon you, and you're going to fight back, and then we're going to force this. I'm like, I just don't see that happening. I mean, the minute they start, oh, you wore a mask, so now you're going to get a vaccination. Well, what's in the vaccination? We're not going to tell you. It's forcing you so we can track you. Nope. There you go. I wore the mask. And I still said no to that. You know what I mean? Like,
here's another one. By the way, I mean, these are a couple of outliers in the comments section. But look at this guy. They trust doctors and their government, and this makes him laugh. Now, I do not have a blanket trust of my government. If that's what you think, then I don't think you've been listening to this podcast very long. But how about this line? They trust doctors. What the fuck, Frank? Like, what? It is 2020. How the hell is this happening?
I have a lot of friends that are physicians. Damn. In fact, my physician is also my buddy. I hang out with him in other areas of life. I see that he has, a woman and has social interests. I just don't see him as somebody who has this diabolical plan to subjugate me.
Look, this business,
and I wouldn't want to insult him that he has, 8 years of education to assume that I know more about a topic than he does. It would be the equivalent of somebody, of him going, hey, you know how you hit that armbar in the fight? I'm all, yeah. You shouldn't have done that. I'm all, well, how much training do you have? Oh, well, I've watched a couple of YouTube videos. I'm all, oh, and I've spent my life doing this, and you're going to tell me how to do something, or you're going to argue with me on this? That's insulting.
How ridiculous would that be? How ridiculous would that be if you gave me some MMA advice and I look over at somebody in a chat room and I go, look at this fucking world champion thinks he knows something. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And I don't know why people embarrass themselves like that with bad argument. Again, we can disagree. I got no problem with people disagreeing with each other. But the idea that you volunteer to espouse just a bad argument that is so full of holes on premise that it just makes you look absurd.
So, I mean, then should we just watch the countries that are wearing masks and see what their government does to them?
Well, that's all part of the cover-up, Frank. See, this is all part. That's what the thing. Anytime you corner me as the conspiracy theorist, anytime you corner me, I don't answer your point. I don't counter your point. I throw out a new branch to that conspiracy. As soon as you have me cornered, I say, well, are you aware of Operation Mockingbird? No, of course you're not. I don't even know what that is. You don't know what that is either. But that gives me a way to sidestep whatever you had me cornered with. And now I'll get into the whole, first of all, this business about, it's like how people, homophobic people think that all gay people have gotten together. They had a meeting when none of us straight people were there. And they all agreed that even though they have made the choice to do this, because, being gay is a choice, that they're going to protect this secret, right, for political purposes. And amazingly, not one of them has ever leaked this information. I mean, they are all keeping this secret against us. That's absurd. That is absurd. Exactly. Even the mafia has rats, right? So this idea that this is all some secret plotted plan against you. And then, by the way, oh yeah, I'm not going to get a vaccination because I'm going to avoid being tracked. How is it that you're participating in this YouTube show right now? Are you on your phone that pings cell towers? Are you watching this on your laptop at home that has a traceable IP address? By the way, were you born without a social security number? Did the IRS somehow miss you in this process? Like, this is so stupid. Like, unless you're going to be Ted Kaczynski and live in and they still found him. But if you're going to live in a cabin somewhere off the grid, what do you think you've avoided up to this point? And you think that somebody's vaccination is going to be the way they're gonna sniff you out? They already know where you are. This is, oh my God, wow. And I wouldn't be stunned to find out that folks like that have kids. Just remember, they are likely eligible to vote, and that vote will count every bit as much as yours. So let's keep that in mind. All right. That's why it's important to go vote. All right. Let's get things back on track here before we wrap up, because I did see a question I wanted to, where was it? Oh, from SMS Productions. He brought up, I don't know if you saw this yet or not, Frank. What do you think about the Mike Perry situation? Did you see this?
I haven't seen the video. I've seen enough this morning. My wife showed me an article written about the video. So no, I didn't see the video. I just know that go ahead. No, please tell me what I
was going to say. I think I can play the video. So let me hang on a second. Let me see if I can queue up this video. This is I found it on MMAJunkie.com, so I'll just credit them. I don't know what the original source for it was. So hang on a minute. Let me pull up this video, see if we get this to play. Oh, okay. There's a credit on the watermark down below there, so we'll credit them. Give this a little volume. I think we're going to get an ad first here. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can get this up on the screen.
How do you feel? Sure.
Yeah.
Eat, baby. Get some breakfast.
Okay, here we go, Frank. Can you see that all right?
Yep, I can see you pulling up the video. I'm watching.
Sorry, we got the ad here if anybody wants to apply for a credit card or whatever.
I can't hear it very well, so you might have to translate for me.
Babe.
Okay. Well, now, hang on a second. I got to get rid of this. Hang on. Sounded like a dance party broke out there for a second. I had to turn the ad down. Oh, boy, Frank. Where do you start with this? So, obviously, he's in some kind of a restaurant. There's an altercation. He's being asked to leave. He's not wanting to leave, but things escalate. You see him punch the middle-aged, generic white guy insurance salesman out there. And then we get some N-bombs dropped. And then he's telling, now that the girl that was with him that's yelling at him, that's the girl that was his corner person in the fight, the girlfriend. So she's being told that she's not on his side. And I don't know, maybe we get a different corner person for the next fight, but he may have bigger problems.
Started the escalation?
No. And Perry has not commented on this direct. Well, he has and he hasn't. I mean, he's commented, I guess, but nobody seems to be able to understand what he's talking about. So, for example, I'll just give you that real quick. The tweets. Here's what he tweeted yesterday, Frank. I hope Judgment Day is coming. I hope all you filthy mouth losers burn in the shithole sewers of hell. All you will see, smell, and hear is nightmares of vomit and feces drowning you for eternity. Your life sucks, so you hate on beauty you will never have, but it will only get worse. If you see us in public and you get too close, I'm going to hit you. Social distancing says you got to stay 6 feet away from us. You come in my bubble, you getting Sparta kicked in the nuts and fucking stone cold stunnered, bitch. Oh boy. It goes on and on. This sounds I mean that sounds like there might be some mental issues going on or some substance or something. I don't know.
It's really a bad situation because, I mean, I think that's why really before anybody takes on a student at a gym, there has to be a character check. There's a lot of really evaluating. I think there's a lot of onus on the instructor before you pass on skills that make someone a much more efficient fighter, because essentially, I mean, with chokes and certain strikes, you're killing somebody in a street fight that's not a professional fighter that knows how to even begin to defend those maneuvers. You just can't blatantly just pass those skills around without kind of having an idea of who you're teaching. And, so I think that's kind of what led to this problem. So you have now a person who has a lot of emotional issues that, not able to contain themselves in the social decorum, now also has a skill set and the abilities to inflict real danger and harm on people. I think that really the only thing I can see is that, obviously this is going to go to court. And not that I ever want to see, someone go to jail, but he has to at least be seeing some kind of anger management courses or do something that shows that there's hopefully a way of fixing it to where he doesn't hurt somebody, badly or physically. And if that's not the case, then I guess jail is the only option.
And, my limited dealings with Mike Perry, I've interviewed him before. We had him in studio on the podcast. Mm-hmm. I've always enjoyed talking to him. Obviously, he's an intense guy. I mean, he's one of these guys that you can see how he got into MMA. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's going to look at him and go, how did you find your way into this? Like, I'm sure it kind of found him. But, man, you got to worry about situations like this just because, and I don't know, okay, somebody said something. I mean, the guy, I have no context for this other than what the video shows. And clearly that guy was not trying to diffuse a situation.
No, actually, to Mike Perry's defense now, I do feel like obviously his explosiveness probably helped contribute to the situation. And me as a martial artist, I'm always looking for what I can control, not necessarily what other people's faults are. That's just the kind of human being I am. Perry, I wish could have handled his emotions a little bit better. It might not have led to that. But that being said, what I saw in the video, and obviously it's not, the greatest, and I only have the one angle of the camera person. They were in a heated argument, and that guy started walking towards him. In my world, if you and I are having a shouting argument and you start coming at me, that's physical aggression. We're starting to fight. I don't think the old adage like, well, the other guy's throw the first punch. I'm like, it might be too late now. If you're showing me that we're obviously not friends and we're having an argument and you start to invade my personal space, coming towards me in an aggressive posturing, you might not like what I'm going to go and start. And I don't consider me the aggressor here in that situation. I'm like, well, we were having a very emotional, heated argument. And you made a physical motion towards me. What were you going to do? Did you not think I could hear you? Did you think I was having a hard time understanding you because you were 4 feet away and now you needed to be 1 foot away? You're going to get hit now. Now, the part where I also, too, to Perry's defense, it didn't look like he jumped on the guy and needlessly dished out extra shots. He hit the guy. The guy was no longer in the fight. He was incapacitated. He was just your average Joe Blow that doesn't train and grossly out of shape. It took one punch. He's out, and now he has a horrible story to tell his children. Don't walk up on guys that look like they might be professional fighters. And then, and Perry wasn't skull stomping on him, jumping on him. He backed off. Now, obviously, he had a very vocal tirade against the wall, but, and he's angry. What led to that, I still don't know. I mean, us saying that his response, it's like, well, shit, I just think that obviously there's going to be dickheads in the world. I would tell that to Mike, like, hey, dude, assholes are aplenty. And you have to learn how to try to control yourself a little bit, or you can end up in prison because we're not going to be able to, and some of these guys really deserve to have their teeth fucking shoved down their throat. But if you do, you're going to, you're going to deal with the consequences, and so.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. He's got problems. Well, I got to let First to Fight 1000 go, I think, Frank.
Why? What happened?
Well, this dude's just gumming up the works in the chat. Sometimes when you have these kind of conversations and somebody gets backed into a corner and they just sort of evolve into like name calling, like now we're down to like this. typical libtard arguments. Like, that is a fucking white flag right there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you ever see those where it's like, it started out with a lot of bluster, and then you meet somebody with common sense, and then it's just like, oh, fuck. Like,
well, I think I saw it earlier. You put down that word cowards.
Yes, we're cowards too. Here's you're stupid, dude. Y-O-U-R. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I hate to do this. Like,
I don't keep myself hidden. You know what gyms I train at? Anytime, if whatever his name is, if you're ever in town and you want to come talk to me personally, I'm not hidden. We'll see.
Yeah.
I just ask that you sign the release, and we'll spar and talk at the same time.
I hate to do this to people, but we got to boot him out because he's gumming up the works for people who want to talk in the chat. There he goes. All right. Well, we got the word out. There you go. Okay. Anything else you want to do, Frank, before I greet my plumber at the door with the face of shame?
No, I'm going to go ahead and get my next shake in and then head on to the gym.
All right. It's a good episode today. We want to thank everybody for joining us, even the conspiracy theorists. It was fun having you. Check us out. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Phone Booth Fighting, and subscribe to the podcast wherever podcasts are available. Frank, if they go to phoneboothfighting.com, what they're going to see is banners. And there's an Amazon banner, and there's an American Shaman banner, a couple of other ones. Go ahead and give everybody the rundown on how clicking on those can help support the show.
Well, you click on the Amazon banner, you can do all the shopping that you normally do online, but at no extra charge to you. A small percentage will come back here to help us out at the show. And then American Shaman is a CBD I live by. I mean, obviously, my workouts have never been better because of lack of pain. So if you're interested in any of that, check that out. Same with the Mitrospec, any of the banners on there. They're just companies that we really support, and I'm not lying. I use them on a regular.
Yep. And all of those banners are right there on the front of phoneboothfighting.com. In fact, if you go there, there's some promo codes on there as well. When you scroll over the banner, it'll tell you right there what promo codes to use to save some money. So for Frank Mir and for myself, Richard Hunter, we appreciate you being here with us on this one. And we will see you right next time, right here on Phone Booth Fighting. Bye, guys.